Welcome, Immortalites, to another round of the conversations. Today, I have someone a bit special for me. It's one of the hosts of Podcasting 2.0, the GitHub genius, sexy namespace superstar, dexterous developer. It's Adam's friend on the other end, Dave Jones. I tried to, I won't be able to bring that energy for the Adam's energy for the whole time, but try and make you feel home.
That's impossible. Nobody can bring that much energy. It's it's not. I mean, it comes from however many years. Gosh, 40 years of doing it. I mean, like me and you can't. We can't compete.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not doable.
I remember you saying you're a slow burner. I'm definitely more of that type as well. So I think we'll match up in that sort of area. So Dave, people who have listened to the Mere Mortals, they'll probably have heard your name a bunch of times now, and especially Podcasting 2.0. But I was wondering if you could we'll start off with the basics and then maybe go down into some of the future things that are coming up.
Sure.
But yeah, would you be able to explain just what Podcasting 2.0 is in a nutshell, and your connection with it, I suppose?
Yeah. So it's a question that gets asked a lot because it's confusing. Podcast. It's confusing because Podcast Index. You got Podcast Index, and you got Podcasting 2.0, and you have the podcast namespace, and then you have value for value. You just got so many of these things, and it's not, I mean, we can say we did a poor job marketing, and we did, but it's just that's not, the marketing part is really not what we care about, we should more, but whatever. But, to put it in a nutshell, podcasting, I'll start this way. I'll say Podcast Index was the original idea that we had, and Podcast Index is an open source and open as far as freedom goes. With we don't put limitations on who can put what in the index in the directory, but it's an open system, an open directory of podcasts. So we just try to list every podcast we can find on the internet.
And there's a lot out there. I've heard you saying you get some crazy stuff.
A lot more than I thought. Yeah, a lot more than I thought. And so we had the idea that we wanted to take the directory away, the directory center of the universe within podcasting. I don't know if you have Yellow Pages in Australia, but the Yellow Pages, the phone book of podcasting, we wanted to take that away from Apple and put it into the community itself, into the open community, because I mean, it really just doesn't make any sense that you would have this beautiful open source podcasting is built on an RSS, it's built on MP3, which is now royalty free. It's built on all these open platforms, HTTP, everything about it is open, yet the de facto or default index for podcasting was sort of controlled by Apple.
Yeah,
they were sort of the center.
So what
of the
that would
universe.
sort of mean, I guess, would be is, whatever your favorite podcasting application is to listen to them. If Apple one day just decided, hey, we want to actually keep all those apps, they usually reference the podcasts that are in there. So then they'd sort of had nowhere to reference to find the podcasts, I guess.
Right. That's exactly right. Or even something as simple as just Google for a podcast. 99% of the time, the first thing that's going to come up, a lot of times it's not even the podcast website itself. It's Apple's directory. It's Apple's page for that podcast. So we thought, well, that's a problem. And if Apple ever decided to do something different, like you just said, it could really mess up podcasting in general. And if they wanted to put that behind a paywall or do whatever they wanted to do. So we thought, well, the directory should live in the open system, in the ecosystem itself. And so that was the first idea. So that was the Podcast Index. We had the idea of an API, the API being something that programmers can plug into in order to get the data for their apps. We had that idea, pretty much at the same time, because we thought, well, okay, we'll have this directory, but we also need an API so that podcast apps can hook into it and get all that data, because the directory is not very useful without a way to get the data out of it. And so podcast apps, we're like, well, let's just do this as an open source project. We'll be, we'll just be donation funded, and we'll make the API, and application developers can write podcast apps, and it'll save them so much time and so much money if we just run the stuff, and then all they have to do is just plug in, and they don't have to run 25 servers in order to do podcast aggregating and all this kind of stuff. They can literally just write an app and plug into us and get all their stuff. So that was the initial idea, and that thing that I just described, that is the podcast index. And so we did that, and we make our full database downloadable for free, so that other people can have copies, because we need more copies out there. If we don't want, if something happens to us and we blow up, we don't want to have just replace one point of failure with another one, which is us. So that was the index. Podcasting 2.0, and stop me anytime, because I will ramble. Podcasting 2.0 is the idea that sort of followed from that, and that was, if we have these developers, and we did, a lot of developers started using us very quickly. So, okay, we've got these developers and they're writing apps. We keep hearing about people wanting new features in apps. Well, let's create those features. Let's do it. I mean, we got the perfect little sandbox to play in here. And so we came up with this idea of Podcasting 2.0, where we could have a namespace, and a namespace is a way to add features to RSS feeds. We can have a namespace and work with the developers in the community to bring new features to podcasting: transcripts, cloud-based chapters, alternate enclosures, feed locking, all these sort of things that were really cool, and people were kind of had been wanting for 10 years. And so we thought, well, let's do that. We already got the people. And so that was Podcasting 2.0. And that is what it is today. Podcasting 2.0 is the name of our show, but it's also the name of the open source movement that is out there trying to add new features and push podcasting forward. And it encompasses lots of different ideas. It's not just the namespace. It's also PodPing, which is a rapid notification system of new episode data. It encompasses, now we're looking at stats with the ULID, the Universal Listener ID. We're just doing it's the whole concept. Whenever somebody talks about Podcasting 2.0, they're talking about all of that stuff and not just Podcast Index.
Yeah, that's typically how I use it as well. When I say Podcasting 2.0, I'm usually not referring to the show. It's to the whole conglomeration of people. So that'll include all the places I'm having fun on, like the Mastodon, and then I'll join someone's random Discord and things like that. Yeah. That was, I think you mentioned a good point there, which was there's so many different things in it that it's sort of hard to categorize. I did my little...
It's a 10-headed hydra.
Yeah, I've had my little go at it here, so I'll hopefully this will be helpful to some people. I split it up into three components. There's the podcasters, the developers, and then the listeners. So, and this is what you actually listed on your site as well. So if you go to the main sort of, I guess, mission statement, that's the three components that you mentioned in there as well. And so for me, I really split it up into, there's the value for the podcaster, the index for the developers, and that'll include the namespace and those things you were talking about. And then probably for the listeners, it'd be the features. They're the ones who actually want, and all of these mix as well. So, the value for value, well, the index runs on the value for value model, and you can't do it without having the listeners involved. And then, vice versa, the apps aren't going to get created for the listeners without the developers and things like that. But
that's right.
That's how I split it up. So I was thinking maybe I won't focus too much on the index and the namespace, because that's the technical part is difficult, and it goes over my head a bit. So I wanted to start with the value for value. So I guess for you, what would you say is the value for value model in a couple of sentences?
I'm glad that you asked it that way, because it's something that I wish I could explain better sometimes. I've been thinking about this a lot as I've been listening to things develop and hear other people talking about it. And one thing that I'm really happy to see is guys like Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting are starting to, they get it. Like, he gets it. Value for value is a technical, there's a technical aspect to it now there is. But before there was the technical aspect, there was just the idea, the value for value concept. And the concept was born on Adam's show, No Agenda. And the idea is that you give value, you provide a product, the podcast, the content, you provide that product, and then you ask your listeners that if they got any value out of it, to give you back some of that value. And it doesn't have to just be monetary. It has to be at least some monetary in order to, survive and pay your bills and those kinds of things. But it doesn't have to be just monetary. It can be anything of value. I mean, we have people giving us, even on Podcasting 2.0, we have people sending us clips, sending us jingles to play on the show. People sending us, a guy sent me last night, Mark Johnson. He sends me updates with all kinds of podcasting gear because he's kind of a gearhead, and he's like, hey, and he sends it to me every now and then. He's like, here's all the cool stuff that's coming out. Like, people will send you back value if you give them value. And this is the important sort of part of it, though. The idea of value for value means that it's the opposite. I like to think of it like eating. It's the opposite of fast food. You have fast food and you have a sit down restaurant. You could take your content and you say, okay, I think this content is valuable, this podcast, and you could put it behind a paywall and say you need to subscribe to, and it's going to cost you $5 a month. There's two problems with that. Number one, you restrict who can hear it. Number one. Number two, you're putting the price on it. You're saying that this podcast, I think it's worth $5 a month, $7 a month, $10 a month. That's fast food. That's, you pay first, then you get it, and you just hope that what you paid for was worth what you got.
Yeah.
Versus a sit down restaurant, which is like value for value. You get the food first, you get the meal, you get to enjoy the content, and then after it's over, you express to the server and to the restaurant how much value it was. If it was a hell of a meal, you're going to give them a big tip. You're going to give back something. If that server, was Johnny on the spot and did a great job, I mean, you may give them a 30% tip or more. So that's sort of, and we all know instinctively that sit down restaurant, that meal is the better experience. It's the more fine dining experience. And so for people who have content there, the value for value model says you need to value your content high enough in order to serve it to somebody and expect that they are going to reward you richly for that content. And then you're not setting the price. You're letting the listener set the price, because everybody's value judgments are subjective. I could really love this show. The guy next to me might not like it at all. And there's everything in between on that spectrum. So, if you limit and say, okay, you can subscribe to my show, but it's going to cost you $5 a month. Well, what about the guy that would have given you $500 a month? That guy is now artificially restricted to only give you $5. So anyway, that's the value for value model itself, And then what we did with Podcasting 2.0 is, bring the technology in to make it, payable within the player and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to get into that technology and maybe how it differs a little bit from the current methods. But what the funny thing for me coming into this was, I'm lucky to be here in a way, because I can see all of the ways where I could have been put off, from sort of jumping in. The first time I heard about this was James Cridland mentioning it offhand in a random podcasting event that he was in, and he was just saying, oh yeah, so you if you do this thing, Adam Curry's working on this Bitcoin thing, and you can get paid for, putting your podcast. And I just thought, man, like, what kind of scam is this? How is he like paying in Bitcoin?
It does sound like a scam, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was, and this was, I think, right around the time when you guys were just starting to open up the streaming method and whatnot. So James obviously had no idea really how it worked either. It was sort of just like, this thing's happening. But yeah, there was. But before we get into that, I just wanted to ask, like, why haven't I heard of something like this before? Because when I first came onto it, when Adam really explained it for the first time, something clicked in my head, and I'm like, oh shit, this is what I've been looking for the past year of. I sort of got my podcast up into a respectable level, but I've always been really hesitant about paywalls. I really feel like I just want everyone to get it. I don't want it to be restricted in any way. And then advertising as well is, that's just a pet hate I've had for, that was born from years and years of TV wasting my time and things like that. So is there a reason why that model is not, I don't know, like, why was it such a new concept to me? Why isn't many other people doing this? Is it just really hard to get to? Do you have to be at someone's of Adam's level to really make it work and things like that?
I think one of those things, do you have to be at Adam's level to make it work? I think some of that is an open question because it hasn't been tried before. But my instinct is no, that you don't have to be at that level. Why hasn't it happened before? I think that's an interesting question too. I think it has something to do with the fact that these are the models we have now are holdovers from a long time ago. I mean, we've been dragging these models forward, and it's always been that if you wanted content, you had to subscribe to it to get it. If you subscribe to magazines, you subscribe to cable television, you subscribe to the newspaper, you subscribe to satellite radio. Like we've always had this idea in the past that you had to subscribe to something, and I think it's because, I know one of the reasons is because people want predictable revenue. People want revenue that's sort of stable, but and so I'll hold that thought for a second, and that's one thing. The other thing is that in the past, I think paying for things was harder. PayPal has been around for a long time right now, but I think just because it was around doesn't mean that we thought about it as ubiquitously as we do now. So I think things like PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, those are relatively new in the human psychology. So we have these old models that made sense, but we have these new technologies now that allow us to do things quicker and more easily with payments. And so I don't think that a lot of people stop to think about what could be different there. And so, so going back to the predictability thing, the stability of income, a content creator is just like anybody else, just like any other company. You want stability with your income. But I think there has to be a recognition now that in the world we live in, stability of subscription models is not there. People jump in and out of subscriptions all the time. Yeah. People they'll drop off Amazon Prime, and then 2 months later they'll start paying for it again, or they'll drop a Roku channel subscription off their Roku device and then pick it up 3 months later. People dip in and out of subscriptions, and especially for small creators, I think we're seeing this right now with Apple Podcast subscriptions. That subscription model, there's been multiple articles now that say that it's just not working. And we kind of instinctively knew that it wasn't going to work because of this. You have once you subscribe to something, you have an expectation that content is going to be consistently high quality, and it's going to be delivered nonstop. So you're never going to miss an episode. You're going to bring it every time. You're just going to crush it on the episode every time. there's an expectation that you set with a subscription that is probably not realistic for most creators to meet. So instead of doing, I think for all those reasons, the value for value model has not really been thought of in the way that Adam and John thought of it. And they sort of they developed that idea. I mean, I'm sure it's not a new idea. I mean, it's just new as applied to streaming content. But they sort of were pushed into that because they had to. Their idea on their show on No Agenda was, we can't tell you how we really feel if we have advertisers. So we can't take ads on this show because you're always going to be wondering if we're telling you the truth about what we believe about what's going on in the news. So they were like, well, I mean, what are we going to do? We're just going to ask for donations. That's the only thing we know to do. And then the value for value model developed out of that, because you had some people giving $5 a month, some people giving $50, some people giving $500. And now people consistently, every show, they have at least one person almost, it seems like, that gives over $1,000. So that concept, I think they proved it out in sort of the trial by fire. And now I think that for small creators, it makes a lot of sense to give it a shot. Because, let's just be, so most small creators are not going to have the download numbers to get advertising-based revenue anyway. You may get, $10 at the end of the month, a check in the mail for $10. That's, if you're doing, 500 downloads. But so I think it makes sense right now in the way where we are for smaller creators, mid-sized creators that don't have a ad-based revenue thing that they're already doing, or even if they do, honestly, give the value for value model a shot and see what happens. Because if you have 300, 400 devoted listeners, and you ask them to just, hey, give me whatever you think it's worth to you. I need the money because I want to be able to consistently make this show. Give me back whatever that is, and I'm not going to tell you what that is. It's up to you. You're going to have some people that are give you big money. It may not be $5,000, but it may be $25, $50 a month, and that's more than that is a lot more than you're going to make on most dynamic ad insertion, advertising based model.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I sometimes question if I'm just one of the outsiders who really hates ads. I would always feel it as we never actually have done it for us, other than jokingly right at the start. Was actually
Casper mattress ad.
We had a bunch of Juan always liked to drink a Coke right at the start, and so we'd be like sponsored by, and this was when Coke had things on the names on the inside of it, so it'd be like, today it's Grandma, thank you Grandma.
That's funny.
But yeah, I would always feel like I'm resorting to it, and thankfully I never had to. And like you said, there's people like Dave Jackson. I've started up a podcast called Value for Value to sort of try it out as well. Also partly to try out all the new features and whatnot. Right. But one thing that ran through my mind was there's probably someone out there and they're like, okay, this is just especially the method that you do it. So now we have these apps. So just to list off a couple, is Podfriend, CurioCaster, Podstation, Fountain. I think there's another one or two. Breeze, of course. What's the difference between them? And I'm not asking this in like an antagonistic way, but how are they different from any other middlemen, such as PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon?
So when it comes to the Bitcoin streaming stuff,
in particular.
Well, how do they differ from PayPal? So something like PayPal is going to take, you're going to have a base fee, and then you're going to have a percentage fee on top of that for the transaction. So you're going to have a base transaction fee, and then a per, whatever percentage is, 3%, 2%. I don't remember what it is, but it's going to be the same way for Patreon. It can go up to 7%. So you're going to have have fees off the top of those transactions to begin with, number one. And number two is those are centralized payment platforms that go through a payment processor. So that's going to be, the banking system, or is international. I guess it's going to be, I don't know if it's Swift. I'm not sure how they do that international, but you're also going to have Visa, MasterCard. All these traditional payment processor networks are going to be involved with those transactions. That can be a problem for smaller content creators because somebody, a bigger podcast who's pulling in a lot of revenue, they're probably going to end up with somebody at PayPal who's like a dedicated account manager or something like that, who can help them with problems. Smaller creators are not going to get that. And so you're going to always be at the mercy of a transaction being declined, and you really can't get a human being to tell you why. Or you may get cut off because somebody sent you something that looks iffy. Legally. And this happens. This does happen all the time. And so you can end up getting your account frozen or something like that. And everybody hears these horror stories. So
there was a guy, and this has been going on for a while. There's a guy I used to follow quite a lot called Roosh V, who he was sort of like a pickup artist, he wrote. Look, he was definitely trending towards some weird areas. I wouldn't advocate for a lot of his ideas in general, but essentially, a similar thing. He wrote some books, and there was just this gradual succession of things cutting him off. First it was getting chucked out of like Barnes and Noble, and then Amazon, and then PayPal, and it's because we've seen with OnlyFans recently, the whole platform is having to change because some people are sending some things asking for it. So there's definitely that aspect as well.
And a lot of it's not the creator themselves. A lot of it can be from the other side of it, can be the people sending the payment. If they're sending the payment and they seem sketchy, or they put a message into the payment memo field that seems, that triggers an automated detection system somewhere, you just never know. I mean,
I'm wondering crazy. That 100,000 sats I sent you, if that's being recorded somewhere, because I've definitely been spending. If the ATO, that's the Australian Tax Office, was looking at my bank accounts, there's definitely some weird stuff been going on there recently.
Yeah, what's this crypto guy popping up out of nowhere?
I actually had a couple other things that I was going to add to that. So one was there's an actual service behind it. So, you can sort of argue that Patreon, there's a service because they are hosting some additional content, for example. So there is a service. But, when you're using these apps, I wouldn't go onto Patreon because I love the way Patreon operates and whatnot. It's sort of... the one time I have used it, I found the experience just a bit bland. Like, okay, whatever. And this is me donating to someone else, me going on as a user and donating. So the apps are brilliant because, I'm actually really enjoying certain apps, and I'll use them for certain ways as well. There's you already mentioned the more choices. So like I choose how much. So it's right in the moment. It's, if I get bored of this podcast, I can stop it right away. I didn't pay that upfront cost. It's, until the moment of decision of whether I liked it or not. Yeah. You know what? And then the ability to do it real quick. They say something funny. There was a bunch of times when I was boosting you guys every time you made me laugh out loud. And so I just, formed a habit of like, oh yeah, boost now.
That's fine.
Then I think one of the big ones is transparency. So I can go onto Fountain right now or onto Breeze, and I can see actually how much they are taking off the top for themselves, which totally, they need to do that. That's, you can't get anything for free. But it's nice to know that, if I send 1,000 Satoshis, this is how much is actually going to the podcaster. Whereas, with Patreon or PayPal or whatever, I have no idea. I'm sending it. So, it feels like I'm sending $100, but I'm only sending 90 or 85 or whatever it is.
It's this is a new, it's like if you take I don't want to say this, the reason the Bitcoin stuff is there is not necessarily because it's Bitcoin. it's because it's the only thing that can do this type of thing. Now, Adam and I, tend to be Bitcoin maximalists, or we believe in the concept of Bitcoin as sound money. But even before, or even if you don't, there's a recognition here that cryptocurrency in some form is the only way that you can do something like this. It's the only thing that is transaction it's the only thing that can do transactions in small amounts where the fees won't kill you.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be set up front. It's not that and that's probably like it does feel scammy at first when you first hear, I'm going to send, Bitcoin through a podcast player, and all that. It's like, oh yeah, I roll. I mean, that's, what am I getting myself into?
Yeah. And that's because, one, you've either never heard of it before, like my dad, and he's probably never going to get into it. Or you're someone like me who I held some Bitcoin back in 2019, and I just could not imagine trying to send that anywhere. I had enough problems, getting it, the fees and getting it, the where to storage and keep it and stuff. And so thinking like, I'm going to be able to transfer this to this place and then just send it out willingly, like small amounts, just seems absurd. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Lightning changes all that. It really does. Yeah. I mean, now I will be the first to admit, it's still not super, super simple. It's not like, not at all. Not like your grandma can roll in and just, have a good experience with this stuff. There is going to be a period of time where we have to build out the stuff to make this more and more easy for the average user. But, if you just take it at face value for what it is and think about it as, okay, this is the only way to do something like this. You can't do this through traditional payment processors. It's just not possible. So this, if you take that for granted for a moment and then say, okay, now what have we built? What we have built is a thing that has never existed before. I mean, literally it has never existed. This is a new experience, and nobody knows what it's going to mean for the listener. I'm discovering things about myself and the way I respond to this new paradigm. So, and for clarity, if people are listening to this and they don't have any idea what the hell we're talking about, is, if I load, the concept here is you take your podcast app and you load up some Bitcoin into it through what's called Lightning, the Lightning network. You load up some Bitcoin into it, and then as you're listening to the podcast, you hit the play button, and every, once a minute, it streams a little bit of that Bitcoin back to the podcaster. And it goes directly to them. It doesn't go through some processing system. It goes straight to the podcaster's wallet because it's Bitcoin, and that's the way Bitcoin works. And so if I do a transaction from me to you, Kyrin, it doesn't go through a third party. It just goes straight from me to you. And so there's no blocking of it. I mean, it's censorship-free money. And so what does that mean, though? As far as a listening experience and user behavior, I'm not real sure. We don't really know. We married it to the value for value model, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I'm glad to see people like Dave Jackson they see how it fits. They see how you can't really talk about one without the other. But as far as I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. What am I going to do? How am I going to boost a podcaster? And boosting is where you hit the boost button in the podcast player, and it sends them an extra batch of Bitcoin, like a reward or a tip. And so, I wasn't sure what to expect. So I've sort of settled into my own pattern, and my own pattern is I will boost immediately when I first start a podcast, because I'm like, if I care enough to go and listen to this podcast, I must value it. So I hit the boost button, just boom, right off the bat. Then I stream it, and I know that Bitcoin is streaming in the background as I'm listening every minute. And then if something sort of hits me, if it's meaningful or if it makes me laugh or something like that, I'm kind of like you. I hit another boost, and I usually usually try to keep my boosts big enough to where it makes me feel good, and I know that the podcaster is going to see it and make them feel good. So, but that's just me, like you may be different. Somebody else we don't know. This is all brand new. It's kind of fascinating to think about.
I've got sort of 3 different methods that I use. So I actually listen to a lot of podcasts. I usually try and test out one per day. I'm always sort of searching.
Oh, wow.
Not for the to find one that I'm really going to stick to long term, but one of the big experiences for me was getting like a really nice message right near the start for us. Someone left us a random review on iTunes, and we'd only done a couple of like maybe 10, 15 episodes or something. Never knew who it was, and it was just like a real nice, simple message. And that was like, holy crap, that simple act from them made a big difference to me. So now I do the same. I probably, either reviewed on iTunes, it's got to be more than 100, and sent messages to, I don't know, like 300, 400 podcasts or something.
Oh, wow.
And so what I do is I typically, I'll hear of a new one somehow, and I've just got a huge list on my phone. But I'm not ready to give them value yet, because I sort of want to see what's in it. So I'll typically listen to an episode. If I like it, then I'll send them a boostergram. So that's actually being able to send a message attached to that small amount of Bitcoin, or large if you want to send a large one, to them, saying like, hey, I really enjoyed this, etc., etc. If it's a really good podcast like yours or James Cridland's, or there's a couple of people I know personally who I'd love to be on this, but it's I got to convince them to sort of come on. But those ones, they're definitely like the streaming ones, so I'll stream them and send them boosts. And then there's some others which I'm sort of like in between as well. So I've got like 3 different apps where I use in 3 different ways, each sort of related to that.
I'm the same way,
yeah. Yeah. Do you think there would be actually other cryptos getting involved with this, or this is just going to be a Bitcoin thing, at least for, I don't know, let's just say the next year?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's where it gets complex. That's where it's that's where we could really, I mean, it's already complex enough, but adding more of those onto it can get really hard.
Part of me wants to say yes, that there will be more cryptos that get involved. Another part of me just doesn't think there will be.
Just to keep it simple.
Well, I don't think it's so much that. I think it's more like, I think the ethos is different with different cryptos. If you look at the Ethereum guys, I mean, they're trying to make a world computer, and they're into, finance, and they're doing a lot of stuff that's not really related to freedom, I guess. The Bitcoin people are real into sound money. They're into non-custodial, meaning you're financially sovereign. So they're into financial sovereignty, and that really kind of fits what we're trying to do too. I mean, we didn't really set out for all that, but it fits the mentality of what the value for value thing is trying to accomplish, which is, the listener is sovereign, and they're an island, and the podcaster is sovereign over their thing, and we're making a private transaction between the two of us, and that really fits the whole mental life of Bitcoiners. Whereas like an Ethereum guy or a Litecoin guy, I mean, that's just not their gig really. So part of me wants to say yes, that I think they will, especially if it becomes successful and more and more people start doing it. We're at like, I think we're right around 1,400 podcasts that have value for value enabled on them right now.
Yeah.
So I think that, and the spec is open, and that's one thing to note, is that we created the value for value XML piece that you put in your feed. That's an open spec, and anybody can adapt it to fit their own cryptocurrency. If an Ethereum guy wants to put some stuff in there, it's totally flexible enough to do it. I just haven't seen much appetite for that yet. Now, I don't know. Maybe there won't be.
Yeah. So watch this space for for that one.
Right.
The technical knowledge as well is one thing that is probably going to drive or a slow down progress of people getting into this. Although, once I think there's like lots of ways you can come at it now, which is nice. If you're really interested in Bitcoin, you can sort of come into it this way. If you're really interested in podcasting, like I was, that's how I came at it. You can come in by this way. So there's lots of doors, I guess, entry into the world of podcasting 2.0. But the technical knowledge, what sort of level do you think the podcaster in particular is going to have to get to be able to make use of this? So, embarrassingly enough, I really didn't know how RSS worked before this, and I'd been doing, podcasting a year and a half or something. Wallets and nodes and even getting into, self-hosting, how much effort do you think someone is going to need and technical knowledge to be able to jump into this?
I guess first of all, it's not embarrassing that you didn't know much about RSS, because I think I would venture to say most podcasters don't. It's the podcasting hosting companies have been so good at hiding that aspect of things from the average podcaster that, and they've made it so easy now that most podcasters don't ever have to think about feeds or anything like that. And a lot of them have no idea that that's even happening. They don't know that their new episode is going to a feed, which is getting aggregated by a server somewhere in order to get their episode data. So, I think I would flip that. I think I would flip that on its head a little bit and say, I think the complicated part is not on the podcaster side. Now, there is some complexity, don't get me wrong. There's a little bit, but if you just write a decent, how-to that says like step 1, do this, step 2, go click on you find your podcast on Podcast Index, click the lightning bolt. If you just walk through it, you can walk somebody through getting their podcast value for value enabled with Bitcoin fairly simply. I mean, you can do it in 20 minutes. So I don't think, and you can do it step by step. I think the hard part is actually on the listener side, and that's because of the nature of what Bitcoin is, and in order to get listeners to have Bitcoin in their wallet in the app, in the podcast app, to spend it, is sort of this Rube Goldberg machine of steps that you have to go through.
Yeah.
You have to go get a podcast app that supports it. You have to go download an app like Strike or MoonPay or something like that where you can buy Bitcoin. Then you have to KYC, and so you have to link your bank account to it or a debit card to it. And sometimes they want you to show proof of identity. And this is all, and that's because all that's currency stuff. That's all banking. You gotta buy Bitcoin in order to be able to stream it back to the podcaster. And so you go through all this rigmarole, and then what you've got a Bitcoin purchasing app over here on a Bitcoin exchange. And then now you're going to have to buy some Bitcoin and somehow get it into this other wallet over here, which is the podcast app. So that walking somebody through value enabling their podcast is actually a fairly simple thing. Walking somebody through getting Bitcoin into their podcast app in order to pay the podcaster, that is hard. And
yeah.
I've not found an easy way to explain that process. So what I hope happens over time is that organizations like Strike, basically Bitcoin exchanges, see this problem and develop solutions so that podcast apps can hook into their existing system and make use of that. So what I would love to see is somebody like, I'm just going to use Strike as an example because they're easy, is somebody like Strike saying, okay, I've got a Strike account, I've already set it up, and now Podfriend could go and link up to that Strike account, or provide some sort of linkage there where it can say, okay, I've got a Strike account or a MoonPay account or one of these Bitcoin exchanges, and I can just link up to it, and occasionally, like once a month, it auto deposits, $20 worth of Bitcoin into my podcast wallet or something like that. Though that's what I think ultimately will be required to have something like mass adoption. On the podcaster side, I think it's doable. I wouldn't say it's just a fantastic, easy experience there that's not complicated. It is a little complicated, but it's doable. It's the listener side that bothers me. Yeah.
It's it is complex as well because you've listed a couple of things there which just aren't available here in Australia. We don't have Strike or Venmo, Cash App. All of these things are, if you try and download Cash App here on an Android phone, for example, you'll get some cheap, scammy knockoff, which is getting you to look at these advertising and playing games and stuff. So,
well, tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what your process has been, because I know, like James is down in Australia, John Chigi's down in Australia. There's quite a bit of Australia that's linked up with Podcasting 2.0. Like, how are you getting sats, getting Bitcoin to spend?
Yeah, so for me, I think like you mentioned this the first time that you took a clip of us on your show, which was I heard about Breeze. I went into Breeze, and so Breeze, for those who are just listening, is it's more of an app designed for being able to send Bitcoin to, I think it's more for a business type thing. So you can send it to another local business owner, usually probably a small one, and it can be an instantaneous payment, and it's directly between you two.
It's like a point of sale.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I first went there, I couldn't even find the podcasting section. I didn't realize you had to click on the top left to find it. So I was just sort of stuck there not knowing what to do. So I the first time I did it through that app. And then, of course, just the normal stuff. I tried the Mere Mortals Gmail. That didn't work. So I was having to realize, like, just the email wasn't coming through. So then I used my personal one, and it finally came through. It was like, oh, okay. So I did that once. And then, like I said, I have had a little bit of knowledge in the crypto space. So I tried sending some from a wallet once, or from an exchange directly into it, which was a fun experience as well, just to make sure that it can actually work. But then again, like, the fees doing it that way are higher. So, you're still sort of stuck at the moment in terms of that. I think the way that Podfriend, and for me, I've found the easiest way is just to get some Satoshis on Breeze using, I think it was the MoonPay method, where that's in there. So if you just go to the Breeze wallet, they'll sort of run you through how to get some on there. And then using that as sort of a central hub, and then I just send it everywhere. So I'll put some in Podfriend, I'll put some in Fountain, I'll put some in, Sphinx, I'll put some in Curocaster. So that for me has been the main method so far.
So Breeze is your Strike, basically. Yeah,
essentially. Yep. It's just, probably a little bit more complex. I don't know. I haven't used Strike, so
No, I've never used MoonPay. Did you hook it to your bank account or a debit card, or how did that work?
Geez, yeah. So I just loaded up. I think it was like, I don't know, 300,000 Satoshis or something, and so I've sort of just been dwindling that down. So I'm probably getting to the point where I need to re-top up. So I'd be able to say that again. I think it was I think it was relatively simple. Just once I had getting it to my email and then being like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll use just like a debit card or credit card I have, and then it'll just chuck in $100 or something to play around with.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've not used MoonPay yet, but it's on my to-do list to go check it out, because I know that it's really sort of the only game in town when it comes to global, outside the U.S. type stuff.
That was the other thing I wanted to say about why Bitcoin is important, which is that I've had a couple of times now where I've wanted to send some money to other people overseas. So for example, between here and the UK, there's a podcast I like there, and they'd created some shirts. I wanted to buy one off of them. They were mostly set up for the people who are listening in the UK, and man, the process of me sending, geez, it was 30 Australian dollars, so it'd be like 25 US over to them through a bank account was horrendous. I basically had to get all of their details, their home address, their work address, their name, they're almost like the amount of things I probably know them way better now because I have everything on them. His middle name, last kid's name, etc.
Kid's birthday.
Yeah. So that's the other thing I'm really seeing of why this is super, super cool. It's just a Bitcoin's a Bitcoin in Namibia. So I've sent a boostergram to a dude in Namibia, and it's like, holy shit, where else can I do that? That's super, super cool.
Yeah, that I think. I don't want to go Bitcoin religion on on people. I try to keep that I try to keep that subdued as much as I can. But I mean, if you think about it, it really is. It's a big deal. I mean, to be able to send money, to be able to send money to people across borders without crazy fees and without just arbitrary restrictions, it breaks through paywalls, it breaks through embargoes, it breaks through I forgot the word for it when you put restrictions on countries financially, but it just breaks down all of those barriers. And you can. We're going to be interviewing a podcaster from Namibia, I think this week. And
is that Oaken?
Yes, yeah. That's right. Nikolai Jonguerrero, and I mean it's like it's irrelevant where he lives. It doesn't matter where this person is. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, and if I send him Bitcoin, it's the same. If I send it to him, it's the same as sending it across the street.
Yeah,
and that's a huge deal. I mean, that's now you can see why the Bitcoin maximalist guys get so religious about this thing, is because it really is a big deal, on the grand stage. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I wanted to ask you as well, switching on to some of the features. What do you think was the particular reason this didn't happen earlier? Like why for example is now that this stuff is coming up, the cool things like transcript, chapters, person, location, value, all sorts of fun things to use?
I think there's a lot of reasons. A lot of them aren't super interesting, but I think one of the main reasons is that podcasting let me say it this way. Podcasting is a creative endeavor and it's a business endeavor, and so it fits into the same category as other things that combine those two things: artists, freelance artists, writers. There is a sort of guarding of the hen house, where you say, I don't want other people to steal my ideas. There's like a guardedness that happens when you combine creativity and business together. And so I think that a lot of the podcast hosting companies do not have always been a little guarded with each other. If Blueberry comes up with a great idea, this other podcast host may not want to do it because, well, that's Blueberry. I mean, that's their competitor. So I think there's a bit of that. I also think that there was a lot of waiting around for Apple to do stuff. I think that played a big role in things. And there's a lot of trying to build sort of like working groups and organizations to push things forward. I mean, there's been quite a few of these things. There's been attempts to, the RSS working group and, the Open Podcast Analytics working group, and there's been so many of these sort of loose organizations that have sprung up. The Podcast Academy, all with sort of the idea of improving things. But at the end of the day, it's not. I mean, they have everybody's got their own ideas and everybody's got their own agenda, and everybody's a business, and so you end up just not getting very far. You end up with a lot of Slack channels and no actual product to show for it.
Yeah.
So I think the difference with what we did, or what we are doing, is that we truly are we're just independent.
Yeah.
We didn't ask anybody's permission, and we didn't try to build consensus. We just said, hey, here's what we're doing. And if you would
I was going to say, it's because you took a risk. You created stuff with no guarantee that anyone at any time would use it, but because it was a good idea, that's what I really drew me into you guys in particular, was like, holy shit, you're actually creating some things. Like I can go onto one of these new apps right now, and I can see the transcript coming down. I love chapters, man. The ability to put in links and pictures and stuff, man. Cool. I'm just about to switch our podcasts over onto being able to do that, and holy shit, like I'm gonna have so much fun doing that. I can already see it right now.
I think that's a good point. Is you said, we didn't care if anybody was lined up to use it, and I don't. I mean, I want people to use it because I think the features are great, but at the end of the day, if people don't use it, if it's 10 years from now and there's one of the features of the podcast namespace that doesn't get widely used, I don't really care because, this is, I have a job. This is not my, job. Adam has a job. All the people working on Podcast Index, on Podcasting 2.0, they all have day jobs. This is a passion project for everybody involved. This is a project where we just want to see things improve and push it forward. I mean, I paid all to go to Podcast Movement, the conference in Nashville last month. I mean, I paid that out of my own pocket. That was not Podcast Index money that paid for that. That was me, because I want to do this because I see the benefit of it. I enjoy it. And I want to see podcasting have these things, and so I'm going to use my time and money to try to make it happen. But at the end of the day, if nobody agrees on one aspect of what we've done, it's fine. It's okay. I mean, it's I don't feel hurt by that in any way. It's just what it is. And so that gives you sort of like this freedom to just move fast and just do stuff and see what happens. Whereas, that just did not exist. It just hasn't existed before. Everybody, there's also this idea, I think I'll say this too. There's also this idea of launching a product versus chaperoning a project. And at Podcast Index, we don't launch products. We sort of start initiatives and ideas and projects, because these things they have to be built by the community in order to get everybody excited. If somebody has to be able to tell it, here's how you build consensus and things that people want to participate in. you you come up with an idea and you listen when people have input on that idea. If somebody DMs me on Twitter and says, which they have, and said, hey, I think this would be a great idea for a podcast namespace tag. I've got this idea for a feature. And I'll spend, 15, 20 minutes doing it back and forth with them and ask and say, okay, cool. Tell me about it. Tell me your idea, that kind of thing. That's something that you will never get. That person now feels invested, and that's something you would never get if you just launch a product and say, or launch a working group and say, here's the spec, and everybody do this spec. And if you have a problem with it, submit your proposals and blah, blah, blah. That's just like, that does not get people involved. And that doesn't build excitement for things. When you have community involvement and people feel like they can have an idea and it will be heard and it will possibly be implemented, that makes people feel good and feel like they're participating, and then they get invested, and then they want to tell other people to start using these things too. And so you end up building this, this momentum that's sort of like, self-sustaining there.
Yeah.
I just think that part was missing before.
Yeah, I like that trickle theory in a way. Instead of trying to get that big group all suddenly in one time period, it's just, I'll start putting some things, I'll doing these, and then people will gradually come in. It's, rather much have 100 listeners come on rather than over the period of a year, rather than 100 midway through, because I've absolutely timed it perfectly. That's just a personal preference.
And you never will time it perfectly.
Yeah. Just for you, some of the considerations as well, as you said, this is a day job, not a day job for you. There's a side project thing, something for fun for everyone. What are some of the considerations, and you're a developer, so you're the one actually typing in the code, hitting the keyboard and doing these things. What are some of the things that go into, where you put your time? Is it a personal preference, the feasibility of it, the demand, it just feels good? How do you sort of decide where to go? Or which to do first, I guess.
I'm not going to be the guy to give anybody time management advice. But, I will say that, for my own personality, what I like to do, and I've developed I don't even know where this came from. I just developed a habit of doing this over 25 years of working in IT and building a lot of things, is that I like to sort of divide my time between things that are fun to me and challenging and rewarding, and things and sort of the mundane drudgery of things. There are always going to be both. It doesn't matter how cool the project is or how fun it is. There are always going to be things that are going to be do I have to do this?
Yeah.
And it can't be fun and it can't be candy all the time. But IT people, specifically developers, thrive on challenges and hard problems and solving things and building things. They thrive on the challenge. And that's another thing that has made this movement successful with developers, is developers like a challenge, and we have embraced that. So, and I'm no different. I'm not a professional developer. I'm a system administrator who does development as just one piece of my work. But what I've kind of developed a habit for over the years is when I know that something is going to be drudgery, when I know it's going to be sort of like, do I have to do this? I will go ahead and do that thing first. And knowing sort of in my mind what it's going to look like, say, okay, I need to do this. I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm in the middle of building a reporting system so that we can report our income, our Bitcoin income, at the end of the year. And so it's going to get, it's getting late in the year. It's almost September, and we need to be able to provide reports of all the income that we've gotten from our podcast and from the podcast index in Bitcoin. We need to be able to provide that to the IRS at the end of the year for taxes. So that's not fun, and it's not exciting in any way. It sucks. And but I sort of knew how it was going to go mostly. And I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and knock this out now. I'm going to stop everything I'm doing and work on this. But I'm not just going to sell out to it and just build it all from start to finish with nothing else to be done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend, 6 hours, 7 hours building the framework for the database tables and the wireframe code to just get it to sort of work. Then I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to do something else. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to do some namespace documentation. Then I'm going to go and do some bug fixes. Then once that's done, I'm going to come back to the reporting software and spend some more time on it. I think by doing the hard drudgery stuff, let's just say 50 or 60% of the hard stuff first, then it makes your mind, or at least for me, it makes my mind say, okay, you didn't neglect it. You've made progress. Now it's safe to set it aside for a little while and go do something else that feels better, knowing that you've already got so much of this done that when you come back, it's not going to be as hard. It's sort of like, eating your vegetables, first to get them out
I'll put
of the
my hand
way.
up for that. That's my mentality.
Yeah. And so, there's something that has always been that my mind works this way. I want to go ahead, get some percentage of the hard part done. Then I have some freedom. I can go do some other things, and I know the reason I have freedom is I know that when I come back, it'll be easier because I spent a little bit of time doing it.
Nice. Awesome. Some predictions maybe about the future. Is there a particular end goal, do you think, for the podcasting 2.0? Is there a point where it will be done, or you'll be 80%, 90% of the way there, and the sort of momentum, I guess, trails off a bit?
For the namespace stuff, or value for value, or all of
it? Just everything, I guess. Is podcasting 2.0 be something that, in 5 years' time, someone will be like, oh, have you heard about podcasting 2.0 and these new features and stuff like that? Or it'll just sort of get baked in and it'll just become part of podcasting?
I think what's happening now is that I told somebody this the other day. I think we're in evangelism mode. We spent a long time. This is we've been around like a year now. Yeah. So roughly 12 months. And we spent a lot of that time just going breakneck speed, building features as fast as we could and all kinds of stuff. The last 3 months, really over the summer, that has scaled back a little bit on the namespace part of things. And that was good because we sort of let app developers and hosting companies catch up. And what's happened now is I've been spending more time lately talking to hosting companies and to app developers and that kind of thing, and to other podcasters that are in the industry, just telling them about what we're doing. So it's like we did a whole bunch of stuff. Now we got to make sure everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
And so that evangelism mode it's not always the funnest thing to do, but it is really, really valuable. And it's something that you have to do. And so I think the reason I say all that is because what I see happening is people are seeing what we're doing more and more and trying to figure out how it fits in with what they do. So I think, let's just say 5 years from now, the Podcasting 2.0 project will just be a thing that exists within podcasting, and it's going to be it'll be what it is now. It'll be a laboratory for new ideas to fix problems in podcasting and create things that have never existed, and also to bring people together in a way that they don't have to feel threatened. And I think that's one of the things those are the things that Podcasting 2.0 provides now. Anybody can show up on podcastindex.social and ask questions and participate with no fear of any kind of garbage having to deal with within industry garbage. Anybody can show up and participate and build new stuff, and anybody can drop by and see what cool stuff is being built at any given time. And also, there is we are now an outlet for people to find out about things that are happening within the broader ecosystem. So, I think that's probably what we are now in that regard will probably be what we always are, or at least I hope it will be. And so, on the, that's sort of on the feature namespace 2.0-ish side of things. When it comes to the value for value thing, I hope that it just makes steady progress. I hope that it becomes easier for people to do and people see the value in it more. I hope that it slowly integrates itself better into other apps. I'm really shocked. Honestly, I'm really shocked how many apps there are now that support it. That was a real surprise. I mean, we thought that this was going to be, 5 years of, labor and evangelism to get 2 apps to support it, But I mean, now there's like 6.
Yeah.
Already in less than a year. So I think if you extrapolate that out into like a longer time horizon, I think that it will be just a slow progression of, we've got 1,400 podcasts now that are value enabled. Maybe, a year from now we have 3,000.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's probably good. That's probably the right pace. You don't want to explode in growth and then it's like, oh my God, I mean, this is not my job. This is not, my employer doesn't care that I like podcasting this much. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
You just mentioned the apps as well. Do you have a feeling there'll be many apps like there is at the moment where I'm as a user jumping between, 5 of them on a sort of daily basis, or is one of them, do you think, gonna just capture it, like get the right mix of the user experience with the new features, make it not too hard, not too easy, will there be a hidden gem, which is just like one feature that comes to dominate everything, and it's, that what gets it known for?
I don't think there will ever be one app that captures everything. Look at the way it is now. There's not that now. And the only reason why Apple and Spotify have large market share is because Apple is the default player on iOS. It's the default podcast app, so you've got the tyranny of the default going on there. And then Spotify is bringing listeners from their music subscription service. So, I mean, they have market share because they're coming in. They're not because of their features as a podcast app. They have market share for other reasons. And if you throw those 2 out and then just look at actual podcast apps, people that went to look for a podcast app and have decided to use XYZ app, it's all over the board. A lot of people use Overcast. A lot of people use Podcast Addict. A lot of people use Pocket Casts, Stitcher. I mean, it's just everywhere. I mean, there's just apps all over the place. So I don't think that there will be just one app that dominates everything, because each person. I can't make up my mind which app I want to use. That's one of the reasons why I'm like you, I use like 4 or 5 apps, because I don't really know what I want out of each one of them. I keep kind of bouncing back and forth. And some days I find that I'm using Fountain a lot. And then other days I find I'm using Podfriend a lot. Podfriend is a challenge for me because it doesn't play nice with Apple, with the iPhone, which is what I have. I like Cast-O-Matic, and Franco at Cast-O-Matic is putting in value for value right now. So I'm really looking forward to that. Podverse, I love Podverse. It's like, I don't even know which one I want to use. So I don't think that there will be one that captures everybody. I really don't.
That's my feeling as well, because there's also the mixing that's coming on of all of these things coming together. You said this on the latest podcast, for example, that your son now has a full album with the value split between each of the band members going to, all 4 of them, which is just, super, super cool. I've yet to actually listen to it. Need to do that, but metal's not really my thing. So,
it's heavy.
Yeah, okay. I might struggle. I'll send a couple.
Wait
of
till
stats
you have a really intense workout and then cue it up.
My problem is I'm really into calisthenics and handstands, so a lot of mine is like really tranquil. Try and find the balance, like not too heavy.
I don't think thrash metal is handstand music. I'm just gonna go out on limb.
Yeah, exactly. But I totally see, like, it's funny, like with this I really see the breaking up of certain things. And I'm just wondering, what's going to merge together if you get that cross commenting on the platform, sort of, imagine YouTube with the comments, but you could go into your favorite app right now and use that. Like, holy shit. I just think that would be the most amazing experience for me, being able to go in there as a user, then also as a podcaster, and seeing messages come up, and maybe I can reply. I don't have to go to an individual app to reply to that. I can just reply from wherever.
Right.
I think, things like that, it's almost like you get the messaging of, we're talking about boostergrams. That's sort of the messaging service of Instagram wrapped into it as well. So,
all the pieces are there for that,
Yeah. Me personally, I feel like there's so much stuff that they're going to have to be individual. Like, I can't imagine one app that can capture the Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, podcasting, video. Like, I've now managed to create clips from my podcast into a video format that you can use in Podfriend or Podcast Addict. Like, holy shit, man, that's so cool. I'm frothing over that. There's so much fun things.
And one thing that I'll say on the app side is I like CurioCaster a lot because it's a desktop app. I mean, it does work. It works fine on mobile, but the full experience really is of CurioCaster is as a desktop app, and that's a market segment that has been neglected a little bit. I mean, there are good podcast apps on Linux, like Casts and Gpodder and that kind of thing, but on the Windows side, on the web side, really, there's not very much. I mean, what you're relegated to is like the web-based player from other directories like Listen Notes or Podchaser or something like that. And to have a full desktop app that is dedicated to being a podcast player is really neat, because you get the benefit of having all that screen real estate. It's like being in YouTube. I mean, the best YouTube experience is on the desktop. You can look at it in your own mobile, if you want to, but the best experience really is on the desktop as a full-blown media player, because you get the super chat, you get all that, you get the comments, you get all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's a really, I'm glad to see that.
We'll just kick it off here as well with the nodes.
Okay.
Is a node necessary? This is one of the questions I've been asking myself, because I'm really struggling to find out, like, what's my sort of end point in terms of like this technical stuff is getting too much for me. So just for your info, I got a degree in engineering, mining engineering, but I don't do that anymore. Podcasting's sort of my game. But coding, I never learned. And there's all these sorts of things like, hosting, which is like, man, I really want to be on the cutting edge, but I don't know if I'm ready to dive into self-hosting. I don't even know if it's possible to self-host unless you have, that sort of deep knowledge of
self-host your podcast. You mean?
Yeah. It's so that sort of level is that necessary for a podcaster to be able to understand, how a node works, set up their own node, and also self-hosting? Is that possible without reaching that level of coding expertise in a way?
I would say that if you don't feel confident in your technical skill or in your coding ability, and podcasting is is a big source of income for you, I would say don't screw around with that. I mean, just because it's a commodity level thing. Now, you can get hosted well in many different places for not a whole lot of money. So it makes sense to just leave that alone, I think. Now, if I think it also is cool to play with it on the side and say, okay, I've got my main podcast over here, but I'm going to crank up a new one on the side over here and just see how, start playing with some new things and see if I'm really as lame at this stuff as I think I am. I may be better than I think I am. So, and this stuff may not be as hard as I think it is. So you can start playing with some stuff and on the side and sort of test your skills, test the water a little bit. I think that's a good idea. And now but I mean, I guess with self-hosting, for most people, you're not getting a lot of benefit out of that. I think self-hosting fits some people because they just like it. I mean, they like the idea of owning the full stack of their stuff. So for that person, it's, they're just going to do it anyway. There's another class of person where self-hosting makes sense, and that's going to be somebody like Adam, who's at their scale, they have over 1 million listeners. So at that scale, they're pushing so much data that hosting companies, they're going to actually be a burden on a hosting company, and they may not be able to get they could handle the traffic for sure, but he's got needs that they may not be able to meet. So I think it makes sense, but not for small podcasters most of the time. So on the Lightning node stuff, on the Bitcoin node thing, that has less to do, my personal opinion is that has less to do with podcasting and more to do with what your feelings are on Bitcoin itself. So if you only care about Bitcoin to the point where you want to get paid for podcasting through value for value, it's probably not a good idea to host your own node. Then you take on a lot of burden because you have to maintain it and that kind of thing. So I would say in that sense, if you're that category of person, you would probably want to go to a custodial thing like satoshis.stream. We're working on doing something similar to that. But I would say that if you're the person who's going to be invested in Bitcoin, when I say invested, I don't mean financially. I mean, if you're into what Bitcoin is and you plan to have Bitcoin, you're like, okay, I believe in the promise of Bitcoin and what it represents. And I know that I'm always going to be, holding Bitcoin. I'm going to have $500 of Bitcoin, or I'm going to invest, $20 of Bitcoin a month or something like that. If you're that person who has interests in Bitcoin beyond just podcast value for value, I think it is worth running your own node. And the reason for that is because it's really not that hard. You have to pay attention to it, meaning it has to be something mentally that's on your list. But if Bitcoin's already on your list anyway, it's not that big of a deal. And then you also are participating in the network, meaning that you're helping to distribute Bitcoin and Lightning by being by expanding its footprint. And so you can run if I don't know how techie you want to get with this, but
yeah, well, let's not get too techie.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is a Lightning node is a Bitcoin node. You can't have a Lightning node without having a Bitcoin node. So if you're going to have a Bitcoin wallet with Bitcoin in it, it's cool. Make a node and just have it. And then you'll have it. It'll be sitting over there in the corner, running, or maybe you're running a cloud node or something like that. And then when you come back and it's holding your Bitcoin, and then when you come back to it later, you could do some cool stuff with Lightning and play around with that. So anyway, I think that question has more to do with what your Bitcoin, dogma is than more so than it does with podcasting.
Yeah, I think you broke that up nicely because there's just, I suppose, just a question for me. That's a real personal one, I guess, which was that there's of all the things that you mentioned in podcasting 2.0, it's there's a certain level where you have to sort of just say, okay, can I keep going on from here, or is this a stopping point? And I think for those two, that's getting close to the stopping point for me.
I want to say this, I mean, to avoid the technical stuff, but this is worth saying, and I brought this up a couple of episodes ago when we interviewed Max Hillebrand. And for Bitcoin people, this may seem obvious, but for people who just know a little bit about Bitcoin, this is not obvious at all. And part of my job is in IT for financial services, and this is a bigger deal than people realize. Bitcoin wallets do not hold Bitcoin. And that's something for people to get. You have to understand that if you're new to Bitcoin. When you have a wallet, let's just say you have a Bitcoin wallet on your phone, or on a little computer on your desk. That wallet, quote unquote, does not hold Bitcoin. There's not Bitcoins in that thing. The wallet is a key. It's your private key. And the wallet is simply the thing that you use to sign transactions. That it's the validation that you are who you say you are. And that's how you spend Bitcoin. So when your wallet says it has 3 Bitcoins in it, well, number one, you're rich. But when it says it has 3 Bitcoins in it, they're not in the wallet. That just means that wallet is the last address that those coins were sent to. And since you have the key to that wallet, you are allowed to spend them. And the reason I harp on this a lot is because of what that means. What that means is you don't have to be scared that you're going to lose your Bitcoins because you lost your phone or because your computer crashed. We hear these horror stories of people say, well, I used to have 25 Bitcoins and it was on my desktop PC and I lost the hard drive. It's in a landfill somewhere and I don't, I've lost all this money. And they didn't lose their Bitcoin because they lost their hard drive or because they lost their phone. They lost their Bitcoin because they didn't have the key. So what happens nowadays is new Bitcoin wallets use a different structure. They're called deterministic wallets. And when you create any Bitcoin wallet that is worth its weight, that's worth the salt, will give you, it'll walk you through this process of, it'll give you 24 words, English words. And you're supposed to write those down because that's your key. That's your secret key. So if you ever lose your wallet, you lose your phone, your hard drive crashes, something, anything bad ever happens, you go and you just reinstall a new fresh wallet, you put those 24 words back in, and all your Bitcoins come back.
Yeah. It's really hard to wrap your head around because it's you're just so used to this other way of seeing things are there, and it's that sort of physical aspect of it in a way.
I think all these stories of people losing their hard drives and losing their phones and therefore they lost, quote unquote, their Bitcoin. I think that has scared a lot of people to think that if they, it scared a lot of people to think, oh my God, if I lose my key, if I lose my wallet, I'm going to lose all this money. Therefore, I don't want to hold my own Bitcoin. I want to let somebody else hold it for me.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be explained more clearly to people, is that it is perfectly safe to hold your own Bitcoin in your own wallet. All you got to do is make sure you remember the words.
Yeah.
As long as you have those written down somewhere or in a spreadsheet or in LastPass or something like that, you're fine. It's not dangerous.
Yeah. Just to finish off, mate, I just had a couple of, I suppose, more personal questions.
Yeah, sure.
One was, why did Adam come to you to start off Podcasting 2.0? I'm sure he knows many people. He's been around, done a whole lot of things. Like what do you think it is about yourself that...
Because I'm a sucker. That's why. No,
he saw how much free time you had, and was like, hey, I can impose on this.
It's like, oh man, this guy's screwing around. He ain't got nothing to do. I've known Adam for about 11 or 12 years now, and we worked on a project before this called the Freedom Controller for a very long time, for about 10 years. The Freedom Controller is what No Agenda's podcast runs on. That does all the show notes and that kind of thing. And if you know anything about No Agenda, the show notes are extensive.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that system is what we built together for 10 years. And as part of that project, the Freedom Controller can end up, aggregate. It's an RSS aggregator is what it is. It aggregates feeds and produces feeds, and it's an RSS machine. And so we already knew a lot about how to write good aggregators and how to handle a large feed volume, because the Freedom Controller is a multi-user system. So you can have 500 users on a single server, and so you could end up with 500,000 feeds. I never knew we were going to be dealing with 4.1 million, but when we started this, but it's fine. I mean, we sort of already had been down this road together before, and so anyway, that's how he came to me. I mean, we just, it was a natural fit.
Yeah, and what was it about Adam that made you go, yeah, okay, I'll do this as well?
Yeah, we had this relationship where about once every 6 months he would call me up with some crazy new idea, and sometimes I would build it, sometimes it would just fizzle, that kind of thing. So I was used to his idea. He's an idea guy. Yeah. So I was used to him coming up with all this stuff. But he called me with this one, and I said, that sounds like a fun project to do this, do it in an open source way, and without pressure for it to be a business that we felt like we had to push to make a bunch of money and that kind of thing. And it sounded like something I could fit into my life without it just dominating from a stress standpoint, from a financial stress standpoint. Now, it ended up being more than I thought it was.
How wrong you were.
Yes, I was very wrong. But at least on the financial side, people have donated. People have donated enough to keep us looking good. So that hasn't been a problem. But then he had the idea for the index, and then he came back with the Lightning and the Bitcoin stuff, and I thought, that sounds like something that's challenging enough to be fun from a programmer perspective. the idea of building the index was neat. But I mean, we'd spent 10 years writing RSS aggregators, so I was like, well, yeah, I'll do it, but it doesn't sound as like super fun. But then he's like, well, let's do a podcast about it, and we'll do this lightning stuff. And I'm like, well, okay, well, that's fun. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's with Adam, you can kind of tell when one of the ideas has legs and feels solid, and that one felt solid to me, from the beginning.
Yeah. I'm sort of the same with Juan. He comes up with a lot of ideas of this new business thing you can get, and I watched so many of them fizzle out. But it's a similar thing. It's like sometimes he'll come up with a really good one. And it's like, oh yeah, let's do this for a while. Let's try this out. Yeah,
it's a good partnership because you're like, I'm not gonna. I mean, I've got initiative on my own. I build stuff on my own, but when you have somebody who's the idea guy, that's like, oh yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, the energy. For sure.
Yeah, the energy.
That momentum. Yeah.
What I want to know why. So I was listening to Mere Mortals. I want to know why Juan, set his underwear on fire in the oven.
So Adam might be the same in this case as well, which is, even though he has some really great ideas, he can miss the little things. And I think this is also why Juan and I work well, is like, I'm pretty finicky, sometimes overly finicky, and I'll, not that I'm a perfectionist, but I'll want to do things right. Like I hate spelling mistakes, for example, and
okay.
I'll be like, no, like fix that up. That's bullshit. Like we're not it's not a clown show around here. Let's not be sloppy. So we moved into this place together, and we've been in here for a year now. We've got like the little studio and whatnot, and he never realized that there was a dryer in the garage right above where he himself installed a washing machine. He just didn't, it's like he would have seen that thing at height, like eye level height, God knows, 50 times, however many times he's washed his clothes. And he woke up one morning and it rained outside. He had wet underwear. He had no other underwear. And he thought immediately, I'm going to put this in the oven to dry off. Like, that's a great idea. And he said it was a great idea for, the first time he checked after the first 5 minutes. It was starting to get there. He's like, oh yeah, I'll leave it in there for another 5. It'll be perfect. And then, obviously not understanding how ovens work as well, which was they get hotter and the heat multiplies.
They don't dry things, they set them on fire.
Yeah, exactly. So, he showed me the next morning. It's just like in the cartoons, man. It's like, like you could fold them, they cracked in half, it was all black and charred.
That's awesome. That's funny. Yeah, it's, I guess it's one that's so buff. I mean, like, the guy's like, he's like huge.
He's
like his arms.
Yeah, he's a gorilla.
Yeah. His arms are big around my waist.
Yeah. He's put his arms next to my thighs once, and they're comparable. It's scary.
Oh well.
Yeah. Good thing we get along well. I wouldn't want to be on his bad side.
No.
What features do you want the most? What are you most looking forward to either creating or using or seeing, your favorite podcasters using? You've already talked about the chapters with John Chidgey and Causality, I think it was. Yeah. What excites you most for what's coming up?
I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most right now is the live feature. And that's what we're working on with Podping. It's going to be all be connected. So what it'll be is there will be a live. Essentially, you'll have an episode in your RSS in your feed, but it'll be marked as a live episode. So and it'll have a start time. So you would publish a live podcast episode, and feed and apps that know about live and know about what it is would read the episode and know that it's going to start at such and such a time, and then your podcast app would show you, like, you've got this pending live item that's going to happen at this given time. Then what what we do is update the feed when it goes live, and marking it as such and saying, okay, now it was supposed to go live at this time, and now it actually is live. And then we send out a pod ping message, which is the rapid notification system. We send out a pod ping message. The app picks it up and knows to go back and check the feed that it's up and running now. Then once the stream, and then it starts live streaming. So once the stream is over, the app goes back and the feed goes and converts that live item into just a regular podcast episode. I think that's amazing. That just gets me, get me all jazzed up, because that is one step away from being essentially YouTube.
Yeah.
At that point, you can broadcast, do a live stream right in your podcast app, and immediately afterwards, everybody that doesn't support the live model, all the regular apps get it too, and so you get this, like, it's perfect. It works awesome. Then you take and combine that with once that's in there and working, you combine that with chat, with ActivityPub, with cross-app comments, and value for value, and all of a sudden, I mean, you've recreated the YouTube experience, but it's completely decentralized. Every app can do it, and nobody's dependent on a single big entity, big platform that can kick them off or screw around with their monetization.
Yeah,
like to me, the live thing something about it brings the whole package together. So that's probably the one I'm most jazzed about.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and it's so funny because each person has their individual one. I read, was it Gary? He did that. The 4 core things that he wanted from his app sort of experience. Yeah. I think that was Gary or Evo Terra, maybe it was.
Evo
yeah,
Terra.
Sorry, yeah, Evo. Yeah, for me, it would be the cross-commenting. That's
okay.
The way I got into podcasting was actually watching it on YouTube. And for me, Joe Rogan going onto Spotify just cemented that. As soon as he went on Spotify, I tried it out there. I did not enjoy it.
Why did you not enjoy it? Was it just
I really like being able to see the comments and being able to sort of watch those while watching it. And then I think there's, it could be a bunch of things. It could be on YouTube, you can sort of see the little times, the video playing without you actually having to click into it. You can, there's all these like tiny little things that I enjoy that I think are in that experience, for sure. Mm-hmm. And then for me, I already mentioned it. I don't know if it'll never happen, and if it doesn't, that's cool. But I would love to be able to link other people. So like to be able to link, we're talking about this podcast or this thing, and I could link to a soundbite or a clip or something. And if someone wanted to, they could click that in the app. It'll go play that 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is, and then come back to us. Like I think that would be, or they can stay on that. That's, either way is cool. I'm more than happy to send my listeners elsewhere, because that's cool. Like I'm talking about this thing. Why wouldn't you go watch it? And it's almost that's
discovery. That's hardcore discovery right there.
Yeah, it's almost like what you guys do, but without, but you're playing those clips live in the episode, I guess. So you'll take a snippet. So the problem with that is you need to really have it prepared beforehand. You need to. There's a bit of technical stuff involved with that, whereas you could sort of, in the way I'm doing it, do a post-processing, like be like, oh yeah, we talked about this, boom, you can go there. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, I like that idea too, and you can see how much stuff would come out of that, just like side features. It's like when you create chapters, and then all of a sudden you have this idea of this extra little bits you could put in the chapter. Okay, we can put location in here. Now we can put sound bites in here. Now we could put, it's like once you create a feature like that, then it's like all these other little things come out of that. No, I like that too. I like that a lot.
Speaking of location, do you guys use that at all? I've yet to find a place where, or someone who's actually doing it.
There's a few out there that are using it. We have been restricted by the Freedom Controller being our RSS generator, and since we self-host, so there are some of the Podcasting 2.0 tags that we don't even use, but because it depends on me programming it into the Freedom Controller, which I hadn't had time to do.
Yeah.
But now that CurioCaster can generate RSS feeds, we're going to switch immediately over to generating our feeds through that and through Stephen Bell's app. And that's going to be a good experience, and it's going to give us the ability to have all the tags in there.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. That's that seems really cool, but I still don't fully understand what it is and how it works. But I'm excited as well. It's like, whoa, new shiny thing.
That's a weekend project.
Yeah,
side project.
As a podcaster, so this is your first real podcasting experience, I guess, right? Did you ever host a podcast before 2.0?
I never hosted a podcast. I've been a guest on a couple of podcasts in the past, just small podcasts.
Yeah. What have you learned from doing it for a year and almost like creating a community as well? Anything, any insights you've gained into yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like it. I enjoy it. I think I'm lucky in the sense that I'm getting my first experience podcasting from somebody who invented it. I mean, let's just say that the guy that invented it is the guy that that's co-hosting the show with me.
Yeah, it's like using a light bulb, and you've got Thomas Edison in your house telling you,
yes,
this is how the light switch works.
I'm very lucky in that regard, but not just because of that, but also because he's so good at it. I see that, and there's also a trial by fire aspect to this, because the way Adam works in his podcast and the way that we do Podcasting 2.0, I mean, he literally he's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And we hit the record button. We record all the way through, hit stop. He basically just makes maybe one tweak and publishes it. I mean, like it's done. There's no edit. There's hardly any editing that happens. The only time there's an edit is if, somebody, one of us, the dog starts going crazy and I have to stop and run, get him to shut up. I mean, and sometimes we don't even stop for that. Sometimes that stays in the episode. So the pressure to get to like be good and be on your game and that kind of thing, I think it made me probably learn very quickly that I needed to bring my A game when I came to it. So when I come to the podcast, I've got just a stack of paperwork and everything that's ready to go. Notes, I spend all night beforehand getting, just jotting stuff down, getting clips, that whole thing. So I'm all prepared before. That way we don't have to do any editing afterwards. So that's the way he likes to work. And I think that it's really valuable to do it that way, because it's like, I mean, fixing something in post production can take forever to get it all edited right and taking pieces out and putting things back in. It can sound good, but if you just do it like all the way through the first time, then you don't have to go fix anything afterwards. And it keeps a level of spontaneity too, I think. So anyway, I think I'm glad that I learned some of this stuff from him, because I think if I had not and I tried to get into podcasting, I would have done it different, and I don't think it would have been as good of a product.
Yeah, gotcha.
For me.
Yeah. I mean, I can sort of attest to this as well. So I'm sort of like a middle guy. I'll want to do my own thing, but I also play the game as well. So, we're on YouTube, and, sometimes you do have to do more clickbaity thumbnails. Otherwise, you're just going to be putting stuff out there
Yeah, I've seen some of your album art. It's hilarious.
yeah. Well, I mean, even those they're not optimized. Like I'm doing that because I get, for whatever sick reason, I get a lot of fun of putting my face on women's faces for my book reviews. But yeah, there is that aspect of, so the book reviews, for example, they are more highly edited. I take out the ums and ers. They're more, because they're shorter as well, they're a more quick process. Whereas when Juan and I are together, it's similar thing. We hit record and then we stop, and that's it. The aftermath is really just me adding chapters to it, and for the video doing the cutting, which does require stuff afterwards. But it wouldn't take long for me to be able to just put that out there if we chose to do it how you do it. Which is
you can tell too, because when I listen to your podcast, I can tell that there's not a lot of post chopping going on. I can tell that you can just feel it. You can feel that it goes mostly straight through.
Yeah. I'll definitely, for the ones where we're together, we don't do any, barring same thing, like a technical mishap of this thing cut up, etc. Yeah.
I think a year, like even 6 months ago, I would not have been ready to do a live stream. I would have been too nervous about it. But now I think it'd be fine. I mean, I'm still nervous when podcasting, but when the light goes on. But I think now I would want to do it live just because I'm more comfortable. I don't feel like I'm going to mess up all the time.
Yeah. Or even if you are unable to think of something right in the moment, and there's a bit of umming and erring, you get over it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a live stream. People are used to it. It happens.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I wanted to, you mentioned this ages ago, but I've really been curious about it. The cancel culture. So you have actually had some people emailing, say, hey, take this off of the podcast index, or request. I've always wondered, what are those emails like? Are they coherently put together? Are they people demanding of things? Are they, what would be a typical example of that? And are they justified in some cases?
They're all the stuff we've gotten is boilerplate. It's all mass email campaigns.
Yeah. Hey, podcast index.
Yes, exactly. It's like a what do you call it? Like a mail merge template,
Yeah.
And so I mean, we just ignore it. It's most of them are silly because they all use the exact same language. I mean, literally the same language. They're like, this month it's Tim Dillon. The next month it's Stefan Molyneux. The next month it's this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like they accuse them all of the exact same stuff.
Yeah. And copy and paste the list across.
Yeah. I mean, they said, the silliest one lately was Tim Dillon. I don't even listen to his podcast. I don't know anything about him, but they said that he was anti-gay. And evidently, Adam told me later, Tim Dillon is gay. And so it's like, okay, wait, how does this, somebody explain to me, but
it's one of those self-hating gays we've all heard about.
Yeah, right. Self-loathing. Yeah. And so, but they, evidently what they do is they just copy and paste these templates together. And it's like, well, I mean, it's the same stuff. Like, I'm not going to take you seriously. So we just ignore it. But I mean, that's one thing is we do, there's a misunderstanding about Podcast Index and how we treat, free speech and everything. And a lot of it's got to do, I mean, we're American. I mean, free speech is in our Constitution.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, there is a cultural difference there, but, and I respect that. But the thing is, I mean, I have taken things down. I took one podcast out of the index because it was dealing with some kind of like incest and stuff. And I mean, nobody wants that. It's not only illegal, it's immoral. And so, I mean, there are lines there across. I mean, I'm not going to leave that up there. But when it comes to political speech, I'm very uncomfortable removing things like that. And, I'll tell you why. Is because my own political ideas have changed so radically over the years. When it comes to things like politics, religion, people, I mean, and I'll throw medical health stuff in there with that as well. To me, all that stuff are things that can evolve over time, and I believe things different like me 20 years ago and me today, I believe things that conflict. So if 20 year ago Dave and today Dave were in the same room together, we would argue about stuff. And so, and I came to change my beliefs on some things by listening to people debate things and hearing that discussion. Not because somebody told me I could not listen to the other side of that thing. And I think that the process of hearing a thing and then determining on your own that you disagree with it, I think that is a valuable thing. It's the bedrock of philosophy. All of human history, we have valued intellectual debate, even if it's something that may seem silly. I'm listening to, me and my wife sat down and watched this documentary the other day on flat Earth. I mean, it's like 8 hours long. It's insane. But I'm like 3 hours into it. It's entertaining. I mean, it's dumb, but it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But like, I want to listen to it because there's some people that actually believe this. And I kind of want to know what that is they believe. Just because I want to be well informed, I want to at least know. And so, I mean, we sat down, we were laughing at it and stuff. It's something, but I will say this: inside of there, even though the idea of flat Earth is dumb, some of the stuff that they brought up in the video, like these little tangential things that were sprinkled on, there's a couple of those that were intriguing. And I was like, oh, okay. So I jotted them down. I was going to go look it up. It's not that I'm going to be a flat earther. It's just, I'm like, okay, I want to go investigate this thing and see if what he said about this, thing in history about, some cover up, I want to see if that's true. So like when you silence all of that, you lose so much. You really, that's my opinion. So that's my idea of free speech. Now, if it's just profane or violent for the sake of nothing but profanity or violence, I really don't see any value in any of that. And, number one, I don't think anybody's going to listen to that junk anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just noise. But, if that is there, I mean, I would take it down because, I mean, it's garbage.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's super
I would
useful.
take that down the same as I would take down somebody's podcast that was nothing but 1 hour episodes of static noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Junk.
Yeah. Yeah. I like those things because it's almost like I feel like I've lived long enough now to realize I could almost believe anything if you really put me in a certain situation, a certain scenario, certain inputs. Like I totally believe I could be a flat earther if, this XXX circumstances happened to me or I was raised this way or whatnot. So it's cool to get those, you can look at that, and I almost always try and look at those things and see myself in that and see, okay, if I don't want to be like that, this is maybe some things I need to develop, like critical thinking in this way, or, getting information from numerous sources rather than siloing myself or whatnot. And then, the practical example is if someone says you can't watch something or something is bad, I'm going to ask Dave Jones about what is it? What is it? Like, I want to know what that is. So there's, well,
I mean, this is all this is a phase that I think that we're going through. I mean, I hope it's a phase, God, but the cancel mindset, it's fairly new. And, I look back at, documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary Loose Change. It's
no,
about
I haven't
the 9/11.
seen that one. No.
Okay, it's about the 9/11 attacks here in the U.S. And that documentary it used to be on Netflix. It's a conspiracy theory documentary about the 9/11 attacks. I mean, it was on Netflix. It was not like on Rumble or some, BitChute or some side, thing where all the fringe stuff is. It was in a mainstream platform. And, even though a lot of people may have disagreed with it, we used to think that it was that it was valuable or at least entertaining to entertain what it had to say. And I think, or at least I hope, that we'll go back to some sense of that where, you can have a guy that's a complete loon who says 100 things wrong, but he may say one thing right. And I don't want to lose that one right thing just because he happens to believe a bunch of goofy other things.
I wanted to ask you, just to finish off, books, man. Do you read many books? Do you have any standouts that you enjoy?
Oh gosh, yeah. I don't have as much time to read now as I did, but I still always try to. And I got in this habit. I used to read fiction just constantly, and I got out of it and started reading nonfiction. And I've been trying to go back recently and read some fiction again. But yeah, I like every kind of one book I'm reading right now is it's by H.L. Mencken, and it's called Notes on Democracy. It's from 1922. Somehow, for some reason, I'm infatuated with the interwar period between World War I and World War II. It's just it's got my brain. It just hooked my brain, and I can't stop reading stuff about it because it's really fascinating period of time. And so I tend to read a lot of stuff that's in that interwar period. And I read some Albert J. Knox memoirs that were in that period as well. But yeah, I read a lot of philosophy for a long time. A lot of Austrian economists. I just went down that nonfiction rabbit hole, and I'm trying to get out of that, do some more fun reading. How about you?
Yeah, I went through a phase of like a sort of self-development phase where it was a bunch of self-help books, and then you just start to get on into just nonfiction in general. Nowadays, I'm more of a classics person, so I'll try and find more books. It can be old or new. Fiction or nonfiction doesn't really matter, but like I just finished reading Lord of the Flies, for example, last night, and I've got...
Is that the first time you'd read it?
Yeah. It's funny how some of the generation where The Simpsons was very important. So almost all of these books, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this because of the Simpsons episode.
Yeah. It's funny because I guess I did not read in high school, or excuse me, in grade school. Like, I didn't start reading until, I think it was like 10th grade. Like I would refuse to do homework, refuse to read the books that they were assigned to us, and that kind of thing. And then I read Anthem by Ayn Rand in 10th grade, and all of a sudden it was just like the hunger went on, and I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. And so there's a lot of books I missed out on in school, and I'm reading them now in my middle age. And there were books I should have read back then that I was assigned to read. But I'm kind of glad I'm reading them now rather than then, because I feel like I can appreciate them more now. Yeah.
That's nice as well. I really liked reading when I was younger, sort of like primary school. So there's grade 1 to grade 7. High school, when I was being forced stuff I didn't want to read, like Shakespeare. There's a couple other types of ones here in Australia. And then I sort of rediscovered the passion afterwards. And yeah, it's nice being able to come to some books from a little bit of a later period and go like, oh, okay, I can see why this is, if I read, I remember reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Reading it now would be significantly different than when you're 15.
Is there, in Australia, there's some of those books that are considered, I guess, like American classics? Is there a lot of those there?
So I remember To Kill a Mockingbird was on there. I would say Catcher in the Rye would be taught in some schools as well.
What about something like The Yearling?
Not sure about that. Yeah.
Okay. Because I read that about 4 months ago. And, it's fantastic. It was so good. I know that was one of the books I was supposed to read in seventh grade, but it's like 450 pages long, and seventh grade Dave was never going to read that book.
Yeah. I was just going to say that the Anthem by Ayn Rand, is that as large as the Fountainhead or
no.
Okay,
No, it's a very short book compared.
I was gonna say that'd be pretty heavy for.
No, it's like Anthem is like, I don't know, 150 pages.
Okay, yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, it's bite sized compared to that. But I'm a huge Rush fan, the band, and he wrote a song that's the 2112. That album is based on Anthem, that book. And so I was a Rush fan, and then he's like, "Oh, cool! He wrote a book. He wrote a song about this book." And so then I read the book, and I'm like, "Oh, I actually like books."
Yeah. That's cool. That's a fun way to get introduced.
Yeah.
Last question, mate. What brings you joy? What's something that gets you up in the morning you're really excited to do?
Oh gosh, if I could do anything that didn't have anything to do with technology or anything like that, it would be work. It would be restoring and working on cars. My daily driver is a 1965 Ford pickup truck, and that's what I was doing today. I was replacing the U-joints in the drive shaft on my truck because it developed a vibration at around 30 to 40 miles an hour. It's been driving me nuts, and I finally figured out. I thought it was a tire or wheel or something, and then I got under there about a week ago, and my U-joints are blown out. So I did that today before we started podcasting. I think, and I just love the whole process. We drug a 1970 Ford out of a guy's out of like a field next to a guy's shop, and had it towed back to here where I live. And me and my son spent about a year and a half. This thing didn't even have an engine in it. It was it had one in it, but it was busted. It was completely hosed. So we took the engine out, put a new engine in it, got all the lights working, got everything running. Basically it was drivable by the time this thing hadn't seen a road in 30 years.
Yeah.
So that experience, like when you take something that's I don't know, there's something really rewarding about taking something that's broken. It's like you take something like an old truck or an old car, and it's such a valuable thing. It deserves to be restored and not just thrown in a scrap heap. And there's something really rewarding about being able to take something like that represents a piece of history, and it can actually be useful to people, and take that and bring it life again, and not just make it run, but actually make it drive, make it somebody's daily car. I don't know, something that just makes me happy.
Yeah, nice. And it's awesome to find those things where there's no that external thing doesn't need to be added into it. I hate the word monetization, because it seems to me like that's the perfect way to suck the joy out of whatever it is that you're really into.
Yeah.
So
totally.
that's beautiful, man.
This is tangential, but I heard this really good thing from Jay Leno, Jay Leno's Garage. I watched that on YouTube a lot, and he said he compared the end of the 18th century. The end of the 19th century, the end of the 1800s, so like 1870 to roughly to 1900. He compared that with the .com boom and the internet boom of the late 1990s. When it comes to car things and engine things, he said, for some reason you had these geniuses that all sort of coalesced around the internal combustion engine and creating this thing. Because if you think about it, some of the hurdles they had to overcome in order to get just a a self-sustaining engine to do what it does is mind-blowing. And he's like, I mean, we respect these guys like Elon Musk and all these internet pioneers, but if you go back 100 years in the past to the same time period, you could say the same thing about the mechanical engineering that goes into something like that goes into the internal combustion engine. It's truly genius level stuff when you stop and think about what that thing is actually doing. It's amazing.
Yeah. The cars are right up there in terms of the internet, in terms of things I use all the time and have no idea how they work.
Yeah. And once you start realizing how they work, you're like, oh my God, who thought this? Who thought this up?
Yeah. Amazing.
How did they get this to function?
Dave, thanks so much, man. Hey, I just wanted to express from myself the amount of joy that you and Adam have given me through the creation of this, and then everyone in the community as well. Like I was definitely going through a rut period of getting the podcast up into what I thought was a good level, and then I've sort of reached this barrier where it's like I'm not sure how else I can do this other than marketing more, or trying to push joining a conglomeration of things, or doing advertising in the sense of putting mine out there. So I really felt I'd reached a barrier in terms of what I could do with the podcast, and like all the features you guys have made is just and all the work you've done is super, super amazing, and it's caused me sleepless nights. It's caused me to invest hundreds of hours into this already, but I'm enjoying it and having so much fun.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been great. It's been great having your voice in there, and I hope that you're able to go to that next level with your own podcast and figure out, because I guess you're going to do. I mean, you're doing value for value. Are you going to do advertising at all? Or
no.
Okay.
I don't ever see that happening. No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think y'all's material is great, and I'm glad. One thing that we've kind of missed until recently is the voice of podcasters. We've had app developers and hosting companies and all these guys, all these tech guys in there, but guys like you who are actually podcasters, it's great to have you in the mix, because sometimes we come up with all this crazy crap, and then y'all come in and like bring a whole different perspective to it, and it's all dumb if it doesn't work for you guys. And so having you as part of this community is top notch.
Yeah, my pleasure. It goes both ways. For the beautiful people who have reached this end part here, and they're obviously
didn't fall asleep,
extremely motivated. They're handsome. Like everyone in the 2.0 community. What would you suggest is the best way for them to I don't know, an introduction to them, or ways that they can contribute as well?
I would say if they have the stomach for it, listen to Podcasting 2.0 show. I mean, we talk about stuff, and I think we try to make it fun and not just boring technical.
Yeah, like I said, I messaged you guys once and I said, the technical stuff definitely got over my head for a large part, but because you and Adam are, make it fun, that's what kept me hooked and got me, not only got me through it, but got me excited and willing to, send you Satoshis and test out all of these things for myself.
Yeah, I guess in addition to that, I would say just try a new podcast app, really. I mean, every voice is welcome on podcastindex.social, the Mastodon. Everybody is welcome to participate there. A lot of people are not going to want to because it's more technical oriented. But from somebody who's just interested in this conversation, if you made it this far into our discussion, definitely go try a new podcast. Go to newpodcastapps.com or podcastindex.org/apps and just look through the list. I mean, there's like a billion of them on there, and start going down the list and loading them on your phone and giving them a shot. I mean, it's really pretty cool, and you might find one that you like.
Yeah.
And then you'll see.
You almost certainly will, because I think I've got all of the ones on the list that I can get on my Android phone, and it doesn't take much to realize, okay, this one I really enjoy, this one I don't enjoy so much, and then you get a whole new experience out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would think, and just, participate in any way that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for joining me. And looking forward to what else is coming up in the future.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a pleasure.